Welcome to This Explainer. Let's just jump right in, shall we? Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating piece of legislation, the National Shipping and Seafarers Welfare Board's Establishment Act. Now, I know what you're thinking. Maritime law sounds a bit dry, but this is actually a deeply compelling governance manual. What we're looking at is the literal rulebook designed to balance this massive, incredibly lucrative Indian shipping industry with the actual human welfare of the people who make that entire industry possible. So let's kick this off by posing a fundamental question about the invisible workforce that powers our global economy. Think about it. When these massive cargo vessels are crossing international waters, the sailors aboard are completely isolated. So who exactly looks out for them if things go sideways? If a shipping company suddenly goes bankrupt while a vessel is out at sea, or if a sailor is just abandoned in a foreign port, who steps in? Well, the text answers this head-on. Section 5, subsection 1, clause E explicitly mandates, and I quote, the measures to be taken for welfare of distressed or abandoned seafarers. This proves that the act isn't just about corporate trade and bottom lines. It legally mandates protection for human beings stranded far from home, creating a real safety net for the highly vulnerable. To break this all down, we're going to use a two-pillars approach today across 5 key areas. Number 1, the law of the sea. Number 2, the National Shipping Board. Number 3, balancing the power. Number 4, the Seafarers Welfare Board. And finally, number 5, enforcing the rules. All right, Section 1, the law of the sea and the foundation of India's maritime governance. Right out of the gate, Part 2 of the source text focuses on the establishment of boards for general administration. The big takeaway here is that this act is absolutely not just a layer of abstract bureaucracy. It's the operational, top-down blueprint for managing an industrial-scale shipping economy. It gives the legal authority to create physical bodies, boards made up of actual people, who are going to direct the future of Indian maritime trade and labor. Moving on to Section 2, the National Shipping Board. Let's look at our first pillar. Now, what's really fascinating here is how Section 4 establishes the central advisory authority for all maritime development. We're talking about the National Shipping Board, and they advise the central government directly. They aren't in the weeds handling daily paperwork. Their mandate is to guide the massive, macro-level development of Indian shipping as a whole. But that begs the question, who exactly gets to sit on a board with that much power? Exactly 22 people. That's it. That is the absolute maximum composition of the board. The Act dictates that there are going to be 6 members of Parliament, specifically 4 elected from the House of the People and 2 from the Council of States. Then, once those 6 political seats are filled, the central government has the power to appoint a maximum of 16 other members to round out the remaining voices on the board. And how are those 16 appointed seats divided up? Well, the central government can't just pick anybody. The text specifically requires representation from distinct groups. You've got representatives from the central government itself, representatives of the ship owners, representatives of the seafarers, and finally, representatives for other interests that the government deems necessary. It essentially forces a highly diverse range of perspectives right to the same table. But here is a genuinely fantastic inclusion. Out of those appointed members, Section 4, subsection 2, specifically mandates that at least 4 must be women. This is huge because it guarantees representation in an industry that has, let's face it, historically been heavily male-dominated. It literally bakes diversity directly into the foundational legal text, ensuring that progress isn't just an afterthought. Which brings us to Section 3, balancing the power. Let's look at capital versus labor. It's a classic tug-of-war, right? Capital versus labor. On one side, you have the ship owners, these corporate industrial-scale entities managing vast fleets. And on the other, you have the seafarers, the actual human labor force out there operating the vessels on the water. So how does the law navigate this? Well, the source text contains a specific provision stating the shipping board shall include an exactly equal number of persons representing the ship owners and the seafarers. The law mathematically prevents the board from being dominated by purely corporate interests. Now for Section 4, the Seafarers Welfare Board. We are transitioning from macro management to our second pillar. So, while a shipping board is up there worrying about industry growth, this separate board, constituted under Section 5, exists purely to focus on human protection. The Seafarers Welfare Board is an advisory body entirely dedicated to the micro-level, day-to-day well-being of the individual maritime worker. It's the emotional core of this legislation. Just look at the specific mandates laid out in Section 5. It is remarkably comprehensive. The board advises on establishing hostels and boarding houses, clubs, libraries, hospitals, medical treatment, educational facilities, port-based welfare centers. This is way beyond just paying sailors a wage. It is about mandating a highly human safety net. They're building an entire infrastructure of care, from basic lodging to critical health care. But here is perhaps the absolute most striking mandate in the whole act. It specifically covers the seafarer who is a foreigner but abandoned in the waters within the jurisdiction of India. That means human welfare under this act explicitly transcends nationality. If a vulnerable foreign sailor is trapped in Indian waters, they fall right under the protective umbrella of this legislation. Finally, Section 5, Enforcing the Rules. How does the government actually make these plans a reality? Because let's be real, a board is pretty much useless without funding. If we follow the money, the crucial point here is that the financial burden of these human welfare amenities falls directly onto the vessel owners. The Act dictates that a fee is payable by the owners of the vessels. The central government sets the rules for how to collect it, and the welfare board utilizes those collected proceeds to actually build the amenities we were just talking about. Wrapping up the logistics under Section 6, we see where the ultimate operational power lies. The central government is granted the power to make the rules to carry out all these provisions. They dictate the terms of office, how vacancies are filled, travel allowances for board members, the appointment of officers, and the exact procedures for that vital fee collection. Basically, the central government holds the pen that writes the specific rules, keeping both of these boards functioning smoothly. So we've seen how meticulously this law is designed, right? The National Shipping Board drives the industry and the Welfare Board protects the individual, funded directly by the vessel owners. But I want to leave you with this to consider. On paper, this structure beautifully balances corporate growth with human welfare. But in practice, how effectively will these legal pillars actually protect that invisible workforce when they are thousands of miles out on the open seas? It's a question of execution that's going to define the very future of maritime trade. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and remember to keep questioning how the rules of our world actually operate.